I offer these every week along with a guided meditation. Just click the subscribe link below to be notified through YouTube when I post the latest recording. Or if you'd like to join us live, which would be great, just go into the description section below and follow the link along to be able to sign up for free. I'd like to talk with you about my response to a really interesting email I got from, I guess we might say, if this were a talk radio, longtime listener here, and this person wrote me and they said essentially, Rick, appreciate your work. Thank you, etc. Appreciate your focus on that which is beneficial. Let's say that which is positive and saying yes to those aspects of life. And as a 70-ish-year-old woman, this person wrote me, I think it's also really important to appreciate the value, not just of yes, but of no, which for, she went on, many, many women, including women of my age and women, girls and women in general, is really important to be able to say and to live. I thought that was really useful and very provocative. So I'd want to explore that with you here under the heading of the power of no, which is slightly, for me, as an homage to Eckhart Tolle and the power of now. This is the power of no. So here we go. And as we do this, I really invite you to consider the applications into your own immediate life. Both the power of no expressed out into the world toward certainly other people, as well as toward certain conditions or constraints or threats that are accumulating, and also aiming the power of no and using the power of no inside your own mind in various ways. So that's what we're going to be exploring. First, what do I mean by no? I don't mean a rigid, reactive, aversive, mean, no, kind of thing, aimed at the outside or the inside. Okay, there's a place for that. It arises. Maybe we need to clean up the mess, clean up the mess later. I can speak from some personal experience about that. I'm really talking about a kind of no that has positive effects and comes from positive purposes, beneficial purposes. To broaden it out, there is certainly the very direct no. Recently, I was preparing to kind of get into a relationship with someone who was going to help me with something, and it became more and more clear that this person had been deceptive and was costing me in various ways. And internally, I just went to, nope, going to wrap this one up. Nope, we're not going down this road any farther. So sometimes the no is just a very no, straight up no. And you might explore your versions of no, good, healthy versions of no for you, whatever they are. You might even say them out loud if you can, or mutter them to yourself. To broaden it out, one of the most powerful forms of no is do not know, don't know, not so sure. One of my favorite collections of short, pithy teachings from the great Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi is not always so. A version of no is not so sure, or gonna think about it, or not ready to go to yes. So you might think about your kinds of no's that are really good for you. A key kind of no is really central in Buddhist practice and teaching. And it goes back to the combination of the moral elements in Buddhism as well as deep, deep practice. So many of the, if you will, in Buddhism, there are these three pillars of practice. In the language of a key language of early Buddhism, Pali, they are sila, samadhi, and panya. Sila, I think, could be well translated as virtue, samadhi as mental training, including deep states of absorption, and panya as wisdom, wise view. Well, the sila element, the virtue element, is often described through negation, not killing, not stealing, not intoxicated, not lying, not harming yourself or others through sexuality. Those are the basic 5 precepts. Also, we have the wise intention element of the Eightfold Path, which has several elements, which are also described a lot in the form of negations. Basically, not harming, not having ill will toward others, and not being attached to sense pleasures. Notice the form of that. So there's a place for that. And you might ask yourself in your own inner practice and your own moral approach to life, your own integrity system, what are your noes? What are your nots? I took on myself the precept many years ago of never speaking or acting from anger. And the first day I took that precept, that admonition, I failed multiple times. And I began to realize how much anger was leaking, and I'm a pretty relaxed, mellow guy, and still, oh my goodness, exasperation, eye rolls, snippy tone, attitude, harumph, certain gestures, they just came from anger. And I'm not talking here about suppressing anger, and I'm not making the expression of anger bad. I'm saying this was a personal no for me, particularly in my family, to not speaking or acting from anger. Anger could be present, but not putting it in charge, not putting it in the driver's seat, which forced me then to really acknowledge what else was in the car, often the softer, more vulnerable, hurt feelings inside, or the anxieties or the longings that were under the expression of anger, which would be obscured when by habit I just engaged speaking or acting from anger. So that's an example of taking on a certain kind of no that is in, we could say, the sila, or virtue element of practice. And also, deep in Buddha Dharma is this fundamental view that ordinary reality consists of processes in relationship with each other that have the quality of impermanence and change. Due to underlying causes and conditions. That which arises due to causes and conditions also passes away eventually. This is deep in the Dharma, which then leads to the recognition of the ways in which craving for certain phenomena to persist and to possess them, my precious, boom, is a fast track to suffering and harm for others. So in all this, the Buddha's journey himself was toward what he described as that which is not subject to arising and passing away, that which is eternal, unconditioned. And that's the essence of the third of the Four Noble Truths, nirodha, or the cessation of conditioned phenomena, and with an opening into the unconditioned. And people have been trying to figure out what the Buddha was talking about for 2,500 years since, and arguing about it quite often. Still, there is a lot of not conditioned, not born, not dying, or unconditioned, unfabricated. So a very profound form of no that we are invited to explore in our practice, including in our explorations of the ultimate ground of all. I call it the great un. What is unfabricated? What is undefended? What is unclouded? What is undying? The great un. In Zen, the little I know, there's often a work with koans, and one of the primary koans is the great koan of Mu. The response, I believe, of Joshu, or a great Zen master, to the question, does a dog have Buddha nature? And their reply was Mu, which I understand in translation, in effect, is not. Now, what does that not mean? What does that not mean? Including, does that not refer to the question itself? And that not, as a kind of no, is a great un. So I invite you to explore that which is un for you. So broadening the sense of no. Okay? Second, we apply the no out into the world. So I invite you here to reflect on what are the ways in which usefully you set boundaries, or just tell people, nope, I'm not going to hop on board your belief system, or nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. Thinking about people and families, particularly relevant to, as a generalization, women, or people who identify as women in family systems, for people to say, nope, I'm not going to do more than my fair share of the housework around here anymore. I'm just not going to. I'm on strike. I'm not going to. So you might consider some of the useful ways you've said no in the various forms we're exploring here in the outer world. So just take a moment. We'll take a few breaths of reflection here to consider, how do you or have you said no in various ways directed outwardly toward other people or conditions? For example, you might have decided, nope, I'm not going to vote for you, let's say. Or you might say, as I'm needing to increasingly, no, I'm just not going to add that to the cup that I'm really trying to empty, to create more space at this stage in my life for all kinds of things, such as wilderness or deepening practice or time with my wife. No, I'm just not going to add that. No, I'm not going to agree to that. No, I'm not going to commit to that. On the other hand, you might ask yourself, these days, looking out at the world, including other people, what could you say no to that would be useful? Let's take a few breaths to reflect on that question right now. You might even want to make a little list for yourself. And this inquiry then really starts to surface something important, which is what's on the inside for us about saying no to others who want things from us and will be sad if we don't do them, or will be angry or punishing toward us. Both in reality, sometimes it's real. We have to be careful about saying no, or revealing even that deep inside our mind is a no, even if our mouth is saying yes, because we have to say yes to stay safe. Very often we transfer into the present our history from the past, notably in our families. So for example, myself, I grew up with loving, decent, really wonderful parents who were traditional, and no was not allowed to come out of the mouth of their three kids, including the oldest one, me. No, no. No was verboten, was a big no. And so I made myself. I recall exactly where I was too when I made myself do it. At about age 22, I made myself say no to my father about a fairly trivial thing. I set it up. I wrote notes to myself before talking with him on the phone. It was easier to do over the phone. And I said no to him. I don't know what it was about. Doing something for him, going to a thing, or I don't know what it was. In any case, he paused. You could tell, like, huh? And then he rolled with it. It was not a big deal, but boy, was that hard for me to do. So you might ask yourself, particularly given your own history and how you've been socialized, especially if you come from a culture in which no, especially maybe from certain people or kinds of people in that culture, are forbidden. There's a cultural no wrapped around that individual no. Or maybe a particular history in your family, or experiences and environments where saying no was really trained out of you in a way, and the habit of suppressing your no was trained in. What's in you that's blocking the authentic no's from coming out? Yeah. And what can you do about that? Can you soften that inhibition on saying no? Can you risk the dreaded experience? Can you maybe take a look at that chapter in my book, Just One Thing, Risking the Dreaded Experience, or stuff I've said about that that's freely offered out in the world, to help yourself gradually push back the bars of your invisible cage. How can you, strengthen the sense of being on your own side, being a kind ally to yourself, who tells yourself, hey, your no is legitimate. Other people get to say no. They say no to you. You too have that right to say no. It's okay. You can say no. Partly because if we have the right to say no, then our yes has more traction. And then there is the no that we say to ourselves in various ways that are good for us. So, for example, we can say no to that mind stream, that train of thought that comes along while we're meditating or in life in general that wants to carry us away, whatever it might be. Often, because of the brain's negativity bias, it's a resentment of some kind, or regret, or worry, or remorse, or grievance, or case about other people, or criticism of ourselves. And we can basically go, when we start to recognize that train, that the conductor is saying, all aboard! Or we find that we've been on the train for the last few minutes, if not more. At that point, can we say no and go, nope, not gonna follow after this. The muttering may persist for a bit, but I'm not going to feed and fuel this. I'm not going to follow after it. Nope. Sharon Salzberg has this lovely way of describing mindfulness as saying, mindfulness, particularly as things settle down a bit, it is some ways like being in a nice meadow, flowers, butterflies, even if, there's an awareness of pain, but you're present, you're there. And periodically you'll see a train go by that wants to kind of call you, but nope, you stay in the meadow. And then at some point, you find that you're in the train of thought, the distraction, the rumination. But as soon as you realize you're in the train, and then you make a choice right there. Do you want to continue ruminating about that, or thinking about that, or problem solving that? Or in meditation, do you want to return to the meadow? Do you want to come back, come home, if you will, to the meadow. And as soon as you realize you're on the train, rip, very often you're suddenly back in the meadow. So that's a internally directed no. There are other important no's directed at some of our habits or appetites. I've myself been, among other kind of forms of raising the bar for myself, becoming more and more granular and careful and detailed in the present about dropping my criticisms or exasperations on other people. And I say this as a fellow who's pretty relaxed, pretty okay, but I have my standards and I try to meet them, and I notice other people who aren't. So what do I do with that? And so I've internalized, and I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. What I call NBC. NBC. Never, that's a no, never be critical. Now, to be clear, I think it's important to see clearly. It's important to have values. It's important to be able to be fiery. It's important to speak from the heart. And it's really interesting, for me at least, it's a work in progress. I'm not saying this as a rule for everybody, but for me, it's really interesting to explore what is it like to speak up for myself and to name what, to me at least, appears to be factually true, reality. And also, what is it like to express values, what I care about, which then leads to often what I would like to have happen or suggest happens, including the behavior of other people. How to do all that in a way that doesn't add that kind of critical topspin that you know it when you feel it, and you know it when it's kind of coming at you. So that's for me, but it's an example I'm offering. NBC. Here's another one. I can't even tell you how often I mention this to my clients, jokingly, that it would really serve them to tattoo on the inside of their eyelids NMP, not my problem. Not as a kind of no, not my problem, not my problem. Here's another kind of no that I've shared in the past. It comes from this movie from the 70s, North Dallas 40, in which a main character, Nick Nolte, I think, is a football player, and he's a receiver. He catches balls, and his best friend is this quarterback, and the best friend and the ownership of the football team toward the end of the movie are trying to get him to agree to come back for one more season, and his body has just been broken by football, and it's time to retire. That's a kind of no. Not going down that road anymore, walking another road. Okay? And in the culminating scene, essentially, spoiler alert, that he tells the big bosses, nope, I'm out. Fine, I'm out. I'm out. Your money, your appeals to my pride, everything, I'm out. Sorry, I'm out. So he walks out, he's on the sidewalk, his buddy follows him, the quarterback, playing with a football. And then there's this moment where the quarterback, who's trying to talk his friend into staying, throws him the ball. And if you've ever played catch, I have a lot. It's kind of a reflex. Your hands go up to catch the ball. It's natural. And you could just see his face, the receiver, the primary character. The impulse is to say yes to the seductions there. And his hands go up and then goes like that. Ball bounces off his chest. Nope. So that's the kind of no that we aim to the outside, but also to the inside as well. So what are some of the other really useful no's that we say to ourselves? There's a whole category in which we give ourselves an earned blessing and permission to turn a corner. We've reflected on our faults, our mistakes. We've felt our remorse, our regrets. We've done what we can to repair. We realize, I sure wish I had not said that, or I sure wish I had said something else. And at a certain point, we go, nope, you don't have to keep beating yourself up about that. You've been punished enough by now. Nope. Enough. It could be a kind of forgiveness for yourself. It could be a kind of quality of that comes through absolution. That's the word I was looking for. Absolution. You give to yourself. It's okay. It's okay. You're not resisting. What happened. You're not trying to deny it, but you're just saying it was okay. It's okay. It's okay, sweetling. You don't need to beat yourself up about that anymore. That's a beautiful and really, really important kind of no. Another no is when you realize that there's no cheese down that tunnel. In other words, when you realize another one is that that dog won't hunt, that duck will not fly like an eagle, or the causes and conditions are just not present. It's just not going to work. That restaurant on this corner is never going to turn a profit. Or no, that career aspiration is just not going to come true. And you just admit it. Nope. You come to terms with it. That person in this relationship is just never going to X, whatever that might be. And then you sort out, do I want to stay in the relationship? Do I want to resize it in some ways? So I carve out the X, so I'm no longer trying to go down the tunnel and get X, but there's no X down that tunnel, no cheese down that tunnel. You just say no. Sometimes you get there later in life with your career where you say, no, I'm done. I'm just not going to chase that gold ring anymore. I'm kind of done with that. That's a no. That's a no that's often really helpful. And then I would just say last, toward ourselves, there are certain habits that we often have where, we're drawn to certain pleasures. I had a grandfather who, by all accounts, was an alcoholic, and I can be aware of that part of my brain that wants that molecule, let's say, and, I need to be careful about that. What do you need to be careful about? What's a skillful kind of self-regulation directed at yourself, and where you know your tendencies, and you can help yourself in various ways, whatever your tendencies may be, by not having so many temptations so available to you. But there's a kind of a no, a healthy no, directed to ourselves in terms of our appetites of various kinds. Okay, so I think I'm going to finish on this right now. I invite you to explore this week to come the power of no for you. And by the way, to make an obvious point, I'm sure someone else has made it in the chat so far, a no to this, in effect, is a yes to that. And so one way we can help ourselves in the yin and the yang, the polarity of all this, the two sides of one coin, is, okay, if I'm saying no to that, what is that saying yes to? If I'm saying no, as Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Thich Nhat Hanh has pointed out, and others have too, if I'm saying no to killing any living thing, certainly through my direct action, which raises all kinds of complications about what to do with mosquitoes and meat eating, not going down that road right here. Point is, if I'm saying no to killing over here, can I say yes to affirming life over there? If I say no to stealing over here, can I say yes to generosity over there? If I'm saying no to certain appetites I might have, certain addictions, in some sense I have, what's the alternative that I'm saying yes to that can help me maintain my no? It's an important thing. Okay, let's review some of the wonderful things that have come through. Yes, indeed, Elaine, that, there's an old line, don't send a duck to eagle school. And I don't mean that in a nasty, nasty way. I just mean, frankly, sometimes you realize, wow, it's not of the nature of a duck to fly like an eagle, much like it's not of the nature of an eagle to paddle and swim like a duck. So there's a kind of a recognition about that. Okay. I'm seeing NBC standard for never be critical. This is my own personal admonition. I'm not proposing it as a rule for everyone. Okay. Oh, this is wonderful, the commentary that's really come in. How to say no that doesn't sound like excuses. This is great, to a person's request. Also, fear that saying no can eventually lead to isolation. I still remember reading Miss Manners, who said that when you turn down an invitation, you do not need to give a reason. Wow. 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 I'm seeing thumbs coming up here. So now sometimes it's helpful to give a context appropriately, but you're right. How do we, for me, what helps is to kind of draw on a sense of internal dignity, sometimes by channeling certain people, Michelle Obama, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that's okay. There's a certain internal self-respect, dignity that gives me a sense that it's okay to say no, and I can explain my reasons why, but I'm not asking for their permission. My no does not require their consent. Very important. I'm not asking for their permission. I'm giving them the courtesy, or I'm giving myself the self-respect of declaring for the record my reasons for the no. And I think there's a place sometimes for a no that is a matter of simply disengaging. We can decide for ourselves, I don't really owe them an explanation, or there are 5 reasons why I'm reducing my contact with this person. 4 of them are about the ways in which this person is really bugging me or is acting inappropriately, or I just don't like what happens in our interactions. But the one reason that's authentic is more face-saving for them. I've just gotten busier. I'm wanting to spend more time with my family, something like that. So there's a place, if we are going to give a reason for our no, that can be skillful while also being authentic to ourselves. Okay. I'm looking at some of these lines. Here's a very important thing that's come in at 17 minutes past. Can saying no be helpful when we want to lose weight and want to eat some treat? So there's a conflict. We're ambivalent. Certain kinds of no put us on the slippery slope to trouble because they trigger us. And this is especially important around things like eating, especially if there's any history of anorexia or an eating disorder, bulimia, and so forth. And so I just want to be clear that sometimes that no, just the word no, can suddenly be the mean, harsh no from an internalized person from your own history, or the culture, let's say broadly, or authority figures. No. And so it's important to find a way for the no directed toward ourselves, if not toward others, can be claimed as our own. Like I said in the very early on, we can reclaim a word like home for our own purposes. Friend and someone I'm learning a lot from recently on the board of the Global Compassion Coalition. I invite you to look into his work. Michael Yellowbird has done a lot of work on decolonizing the brain. Michael is a Native American, a dean at a university currently in Canada. And So my point being is that we can kind of decolonize in some sense, or however you relate to that word, choose other words if you like. Certainly, in some cases, it's literally decolonizing the mind, reclaiming for yourself the meanings of certain things, like the meanings for you of your heart's no, the healthy heart no. And being aware of sometimes the word no can just get incorporated into or co-opted by, other your own personal history. So being careful about that. And if you like, finding other other words. I'm thinking I never watched much Seinfeld, but something like nada nada or eh. Find your own versions, of no. Okay. Okay, great. I'm looking through great comments about this. Great. Beautiful comments. Thank you for just the wisdom coming through the chat. I'm looking for specific questions. I might say a lot of people talked about the inhibitions, on saying no. And I think it's very useful to be mindful of those and then practice with them. We're kind to ourselves. We stand up for the no inside ourselves. We remind ourselves of the ways that others are entitled to say no. So we are entitled as well. Maybe talking with other people who may come from a similar culture or have a similar history, perhaps around gender socialization, to help each other learn to say no. Maybe we'll come back next week and we'll find that some people have formed, a little club, like the Nope Club. Nope. I think of that TV ad some years ago, Nope, where the character was just hitting the no button all the time. No, 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 right? And support each other in that regard. Okay. Let's see. So I'm seeing all kinds of great comments. I'm seeing if anything is last. Setting boundaries, that's a no, including tacit boundaries. We communicate our no sometimes simply with our own behavior. Okay. There's an important no that I want to name that for many, many people is highly relevant these days. And you can apply it in any which way you like, but it's the idea of getting certain people out of your head. That critical step-parent, or dealing with the ways these days some of the greatest minds of our generation are trying to get into our heads in all these sneaky, subversive ways through social media, getting us to want to buy stuff, getting into our heads, and also getting into our heads politically, in all kinds of ways, or including that what they're doing is outrageous, so we're outraged, and now they're in our head. And I'm not talking about putting our head in the sand like the proverbial ostrich and ignoring the facts, but more like, how much rent-free real estate do we want to provide them or their behavior or latest things they do, whatever, inside our heads? And one of the no's is sort of like, nah, you're out there. Bad enough that you're running the show out there one way or another, like your landlord that you're really mad about, and you're just, or bad enough they're your ex, and it's just this constant hassle. Bad enough that that's happening out there. A no says, not in here. You don't get to, as the Buddha talked about a long time ago, you do not get to invade my mind and remain. Not. That's a no. Okay. And then finishing here, if I may, I want to go back to the great I was talking about. Unborn, undying, unconditioned. And in ordinary reality, the sense of being unafflicted, unafflicted, uncontracted, unpressured. And as you may know, our natural home is where we go when we're undisturbed, untroubled, and feel that way in the core of our being. Even if outside ourselves we're dealing with troubles, pressures are coming at us, in the core of our being at least, we feel untroubled, unpressured, undriven. And that's a very important homecoming to the extent we can repeatedly practice that. And in terms of our three major needs for safety, satisfaction, and connection, we can feel and help ourselves feel in the present, unthreatened, basically all right now. In terms of our need for satisfaction, we can help ourselves feel not dissatisfied, not discontent. In other words, content. And also in relationships, we can help ourselves to feel unconflicted. Deep in our heart, we know how we feel, and we feel loving and clear about who we are, where we stand, and what we're going to do, whatever that might be. And the more that we can come home to the great un, including to the extent that it's real for you, the great un of the underlying ground of all, unborn, undying, and thus timeless, the more rested we'll be in a resilient well-being and with an unshakable sense in the core of peacefulness, contentment, and love. And that's a very ultimate and profound kind of no. Not craving, not contracted, not self. Not intimidated, not befuddled. Nope. No more of that.